Hi, it's time for Good Energy, and I'm Dr. Julie, and we're on day 58, Bodyful day 58, taste. The complexity of Blackstrap Molasses. All right, so if you haven't guessed, you need some molasses. I've got some in here, as usual. And we're going to talk about that last flavor. All right, so let's go ahead and take our deep breaths in and release. Breathe from all the way down to the bottom, all the way back, all the way up into the top. Deep breath in and release. Now, think about any garbage, anything that's been hitting you, stressful. Take a deep breath in and release. Feeling it a little bit right here. Let's see what happens. All right, today is day 58, and we're talking about that last sense, that last flavor of taste. We've already talked about umami, we've talked about sweet, we've talked about salt, we've talked about bitter, we've talked about sour. Oh no, we haven't talked about sweet. Today is about sweet. But we've talked about all the other 5 components of taste. And today we're talking about blackstrap molasses, which is not just sweet. So for those of you who don't know what blackstrap molasses is, when you make sugar, you take the cane sugar, you pulverize it down, and you boil it. And on the first boiling, you take off one layer of sugar and out of the liquid. And what's left in the bottom, the particulate, is considered light molasses. You boil it again, you take off another layer. The particulate that's left over, that becomes dark molasses. You boil it a third time, take off the sugar, and the particulate that's left out of there is blackstrap molasses. So blackstrap molasses is considered 3 times boiled cane sugar. Each time they evaporate out layers of sugar that they can then package and sell off. Now, blackstrap molasses is very different from its counterparts in light and dark in that it really is quite intense. There is, when you taste blackstrap molasses, so unless you actively search it out, the molasses in molasses sugar cookie is not blackstrap molasses. When you taste blackstrap molasses, there is a little bit of sweet, but there is also a whole lot of bitter, which if you haven't been able to tell in the whole 58 days when I've talked about taste, it's been bitter, 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 bitter. There's a whole lot of bitter in there. Now, the interesting thing is that bitter is derived out of all the particulate that's left in the cane sugar, or that's left in the sugar cane after boiling it down. So what actually is in sugar cane? So we can also think about this in terms of like maple syrup. What's left after you boil off all of this liquid or boil off all the sugar? There is some really good stuff that's left. In blackstrap molasses, it's a lot of iron, it's a lot of calcium, it's magnesium, it's B6, it's selenium, it's potassium. These are all things that are totally not present in sugar. So what can you do with molasses? Well, because it has a complex sweetener, you can put it in things as long as you want complexity in your flavors. So interestingly, I make a chocolate chip muffin at home. And with just regular sugar, it's kind of bland, it's a little dry. But as soon as I put in blackstrap molasses, it's just a little extra into the normal sweetener that I put in my chocolate chip muffins. There is a depth that is just like, it just grabs you. And I don't know if it's the bitter. I don't know if it's the added moisture. But there is something about the mixture of blackstrap molasses and cocoa that is really quite amazing. It's not too sweet. It's definitely not milk chocolate. It's more along the lines of a melty schmelty dark chocolate, black chocolate, dark, really dark chocolate. And so there are some amazing things. So I will tell patients to add a little blackstrap molasses to their diet if they're anemic, because the amount of iron in here is pretty impressive. Likewise, a tablespoon of blackstrap molasses is the equivalent to a half a banana for potassium. So it's good for bone health. It's good for heart health. It's good for energy. Selenium is thyroid health. So the fact that we take something, boil off all the sweet stuff, and we're left with this goodness is pretty darn amazing if you don't mind bitter. But we get back to the fact that standard American diet doesn't include a lot of bitter. So maybe the other place that I actually use this is I'll throw it in instead of regular sugar when I'm making a stir fry. I'll throw it in as the sweet version of my stir fry. So I'll do a chicken stock and some soy sauce, and then I'll do this instead of just regular sugar to give that sweet, salty, sour, bitter combination. Because one of the interesting things about when you dig into all the flavors of the tongue is that the more complex you can make your food, just like when we talked about with chips, the more complex you can make your food, the more satisfying it is, because it taps into multiple flavors, it taps into multiple senses. All right, so other things to remember, of course, is that blackstrap molasses does not move this way in January. It is significantly slower. And if you ever have a bottle of it and you're down to the little wee bits at the bottom, the cover doesn't come off very well. So a few things to keep in mind with your blackstrap molasses, but go ahead and experiment. It's a flavor, it's a taste. You can add a little bit into your food, and it does a lot of things. All right, let's go ahead and finish it off. Take a deep breath in and release. All right, I hope you have fun exploring what blackstrap molasses can do in your food and in your flavor profiles, and I will see you tomorrow. Take care.